Hey, pals. This is the WP Roundtable Show, episode 182. My name's Kyle Maurer, coming at you from Jackson, Michigan, talking about WordPress stuff every day. Today, I'm joined by John Locke of Lockedown Design and SEO, coming to us from near Sacramento, California. Is that right?
Yeah, we're on the outskirts. If you go one direction, it's Wilton. You go the other direction, it's Elk Grove. You go the other direction, it's Sacramento. But yeah, so that's where we're at.
Gotcha. Yeah, my wife and I visited there once a few years ago because we have a relative in Rescue, I think, kind of in the mountains.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Stayed up there, went to like some historic like gold mine or something out there. That was kind of
Like
neat.
Amador County. Yeah.
Probably.
We. Yeah.
It was beautiful
That's it.
country.
That's.
And the one
Oh
of our
yeah.
memories was driving there and talking to people and then driving to Napa Valley through the valley to Sacramento. And everywhere we went, we talked about where we had been or where we were going. And without fail, every person we talked to said, "Oh, it's beautiful over there." Which was just in the end, we were just laughing about it because it's Northern California and everywhere is beautiful.
Oh yeah. Most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
So yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say I'm excited about our conversation. John runs an agency, does WordPress stuff and SEO stuff. These are things that I've had experience with over the years, and I'm really excited to kind of like pick your brain about it and hear more of your story, like how you ended up running this thing. But before we dive into your background, John, we're going to share our quick picks of the week. Quick moment to share from each of us something that we just think is worthy of spreading the news about. Could be anything that has taken your interest, a good show, a good plugin, a good website, newsletter, beer, anything that you are interested in sharing these days. And mine is a new plugin, actually, which is kind of unusual for me, but this comes from a guy named Jonathan Christopher, who is an amazing developer. He created Search WP. He's one of the most respected developers and business owners in the plugin space, if you ask somebody like me. And he's one of the guys that, like, if he makes something, I just recommend it without even looking at it. He's that good. And he made a new plugin called Organize WP, and you can find it at organizedwp.com. And it looks pretty slick, like a new approach to content strategy and information architecture type stuff. I think some of his demos will do a better job of describing it than I can, but I recommend everybody go and take a look at it. So go to organizedwp.com and check out Jonathan's latest work. John, do you have something cool to share?
Yeah, most definitely. And this is going to be an album, but a new album that dropped by Cypress Hill, Elephants on Acid. If you're a fan of them from back in the day, definitely go check that out.
Right on. Wow, that's brand new then?
Brand new.
Super cool. And good reviews from you.
Good reviews. Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that, John. And folks, check it out if you want to hear some good music. John knows his stuff when it comes to the music. Now, I want to dig into your background, John, and kind of set the stage a little bit because, you know, people probably have heard you talk a million times on all those other shows that you appear on and heard all the advice that you give. But a lot of them are probably scratching their heads thinking, like, who is this John guy and what's his story? So let's dig in a little bit. And where I usually like to start is the moment when you had whatever is closest to a clear vision for your future and a plan that you wanted to act upon, something that you deliberately pursued, and maybe early in your career when you said, I think this is what I want to do with my life. Can you take us back to whatever's the closest to that moment and talk us through the first steps you took?
Yeah. So, okay. So I'll give you about a minute, a backstory on this. From the time I was 19 up until about 2008 or so, I was a member of the Bakers Union. I used to manage bakeries for Safeway. Later, I worked in a European bakery here in Sacramento, and then I worked at the Wonder Bread plant. And when I came on there, They had just come out of bankruptcy the first time. And I was going for a, kind of just a small promotion there, mixing the dough there, but they were like, no, you belong over in this section, like picking up pans. There's all these pans that come down this conveyor belt. Uh, uh, Basically, and it's like 2.5 hours of picking up the pans and stacking them, and it's just insane. But anyway, that was I have to get out of this profession, because I was seeing that wages were flat, if not dropping. And I said, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to do something. So I settled on web design. So I was taking online school to learn that, and I knew nothing. I didn't even know how to make an HTML page. I knew zero. This is about 2009. But by the time the factory eventually closed, I think this is around November of 2012, I had already done a ton of websites for friends and family, and I had done a couple, client sites. So I was ready to go. A lot of these other people were out of work for 2 years, because they were just dead set on the fact that they were going to, go back to work at a bakery somewhere, but there was just no jobs. So ever since that day, I've been running this game just like this. So
Wow. That transition seems abrupt and, if I may, a little random, from the bakery to web design. That makes me think of the kind of game where you say, where am I going to go to vacation? And you close your eyes and you spin a
yeah,
globe and you stab the globe. Like, how did you make the leap to
yeah.
web design?
Well, it was a lot longer than that in actuality, because I spent about 2 years learning web development, HTML, CSS, a little bit of jQuery. Around 2011 is when I first encountered WordPress. So I started building sites with that. So I had about a year of building custom themes when I had made that transition. And initially, I was doing subcontracting for larger agencies for not a lot of money. I was doing a couple client sites around town here. Eventually I just kind of kept leveling up, trying to get better clients, pricing out from specific agencies that I was working for, and then, kind of leveling up to new relationships with other agencies. And it was about a year and a half ago when I stopped subcontracting, doing WordPress builds for agencies overall, and just focusing on keeping everything in house, and doing SEO for clients, and just continuing on building WordPress sites, but not making that the main focus anymore. So
You said you built some sites for friends and stuff in the early stages, but I'm always curious. It's not easy. It isn't super easy when you're getting started. You don't have maybe a background. You're not coming from the same field with a lot of connections. Getting those early clients that actually brings in money and getting to the point where it's starting to pay your bills a little bit, this occupation, like, that is a hard chapter. So what was your strategy? Like, how did you get some of those early clients?
So I pretty much did everything that I could think of. The very first client that I got, I was putting flyers up on telephone poles downtown, and that's how I got my first client. And by the way, don't do that if that's an idea. But I would scour job boards like jobs.wordpress.net. There's some there's another one, WordPress jobs or .com or something like that. I can't remember, but authentic jobs. That's usually how I got hooked up with the different agencies. One agency that I would do the occasional site build for. They knew me from the Treehouse forum.
Wow.
So yeah. So it's just being everywhere I could possibly think of, applying to a million things, just putting in bids, and a lot of them would get rejected. But I've tried everything from Upwork, to, uh, you know, ads and everything else. I've tried pretty much everything and just kind of settled on, what works for me. So
That everything you mentioned is like online. Did you have a significant part of your client base from anything like in person in your community?
very great question. So I did join, I've joined a lot of the chambers of commerce.
Well, looks like I lost John. That's not fun. But that means you just get to spend a moment with Kyle. I recollect the early days when I was learning about SEO. That was a weird time. I was building junk websites for an agency that was scamming their customers in the end, which I didn't really understand fully at the time because I was pretty naive. SEO was a big part of our offering and a big part of what I was trying to do for that agency. I studied SEO like crazy. I watched every Matt Cutts video. I studied Moz. I studied all the SEO websites. Hey, John, are you back? Well, I'll keep talking then. SEO was kind of my thing for a little while. I learned all about keyword stuffing and those fun hacks. I studied black hat forums just to learn out of curiosity. I knew all about webmaster tools and analytics. We had a third-party mentor come in and teach me everything they knew about SEO. That was fun. Oh, hey, John, you back? Hello? John, can you hear me?
Hey there.
Yeah, I'm here.
I don't know what happened there.
That's okay. We lost you a couple minutes ago, so I just started chatting about my memories of how I started learning web dev and SEO. It's not a very
Very
interesting
good.
story, so I stopped. And let's resume your story, actually, if we can. You were talking a little bit about
Yeah.
what you did in person to find clients in your community.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm pretty lucky here. There's a variety of chambers of commerce. So I tried out a variety of them, and I did get, some clients from that. Some of them were better than others, and I do have one legacy client from that still on my client roster. But that's definitely a way to get started, because there's usually going to be somebody looking for that. You're going to be able to connect to businesses directly face to face, and that's not a bad place to start. Um, just letting people know what you do.
Mm. Gotcha. Okay, so you got some of those early clients, and I don't get the impression you were really picky about the types of projects you were taking on in those stages, just bidding on whatever came across your way. But over the course of that time, you started to develop a skill set and get pretty good at some things and build up your business. At what point did you start to kind of like make a name for yourself and have like a go-to skill set? Where you were able to hone your brand and specialize a little.
Excellent question. So one of the things that I think benefited was I was, keeping a blog pretty much from the start. Maybe like 9 months into it, I started doing that. So I was writing down just things that I stood for and what I believed in and what I learned, from doing web design. And a lot of it, I was, just writing what I thought people would need and what they would discover. So a lot of like WordPress tutorials, just thoughts on web design. and some of those gained traction. So I think that probably helped. Also, as you mentioned too, I got more confidence in my skills as I got more experience underneath my belt and handle on how to scope and do certain projects. I've definitely had projects that spiraled way out of control in the early days. It just never ended. But initially, one of the things that I found after a couple of years was I had a sweet spot in doing custom theme development. So that's something that I hammered on for a long time. And more recently, I kind of switched focus to SEO because for one, there's a real need for it that I saw just with clients and, working as a partner with different agencies, that a lot of people, they'd have a very pretty looking site, but it wouldn't necessarily be getting traffic. So that's one of those things that I wanted to help people with. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That doesn't sound like a very uncommon trajectory for some of us who are getting started doing these services for our clients. And you found something that you're interested in a way to make a difference. Like you say that there's a need. That's that's a sign. Those are the things that we latch onto and take care of for our clients. Can you recall? You mentioned some projects going off the rails a little bit, and those are always fun. I can't resist asking about those stories. So, do you have any particular story that you can share? And I'm thinking of the one that maybe was most impactful, like you made changes, big changes after this project going so poorly, and maybe one that you can laugh a little bit about now, but it was anything but funny at the time.
Yeah, so definitely. Well, there's one. I got one of each. There was one client project that I did for my own client where I completely over delivered, and I spent a lot of time on this site, and I probably should have communicated what I was doing. The original contact that I had was the daughter and the son-in-law of the owner, and they were really behind getting a website for this particular company. And the actual owner, he really didn't care that much. But I ended up making this like really elaborate site with, hundreds and hundreds of pages. And he was more thinking just like a 4-page basic site. He probably would have been fine with a GoDaddy Builder site, but it got way off the rails. And I probably should have. That's the first big lesson that I had, was like, communicate often. Tell people what you're doing. Don't, completely try and give them everything if they don't really want it. And the second one was a website build that I was doing for an agency that I was working with early on. And this was a subcontract, but it was for this site. They got a lot of blog traffic. They're a big blogging site, and they blog about music. And I had set a price for this project, but what happened was we built the site the one time, and then I guess the actual client came back to the agency that was contracting me, and they're like, make all these changes, like, later on. And I just went along with it because I'd given my word, and I tried to stay true to my word, and I didn't, have this guts at that time to just say, hey, or just the awareness to say, like, hey, this is out of scope. I should probably say either, hell no, I'm not doing this, or if I am, I need to charge more, and they could figure out how to pay for it. And so we ended up rebuilding it again. And I think all in all, this project went like almost a year before it like finally went live. And the guy still wasn't super happy with it. But, I after that, it was like, get everything in writing. Make sure that there's a contract. Don't do things on an email. Don't do things on a handshake. Make sure that everything is spelled out exactly what you're going to do, what it's going to cost. If there's anything outside of this scope, then that's going to be a separate thing that we negotiate.
Sure. Wow. Those sound, both unique and at the same time classic lessons that it seems like all of us just have to go through some of those. We have to suffer through some of those projects that go way too long before we are convinced that it is important to implement some of these new processes and require them along the way. We definitely had to go through that ourselves. And I like the point that you make about the story of over delivering for a client, because that one resonates with me and really brings back some memories. And I don't hear this stuff talked about a lot, because you and I are both in circles where we vent about clients and talk about challenges and how to get them to pay for everything that we want to do and set their expectations and blah, blah, blah. We're all in that stuff all the time, right? So I remember times where I was actually excited to do what the client needed and was definitely over delivering. And it was such a bummer and a rude awakening when I discovered how little appreciation there was in the end. When I thought, I'm going so far above and beyond, but this is really cool. This is really cool. I'm doing something awesome for this client. It's just what they need. And then when it's done, like crickets, or why did you do that? Those are weird moments.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if you found this, but one thing that I've found to be true is the level of appreciation is inverse to how much you're charging.
Sure. Yeah, that definitely experienced that. You're saying that the more you charge, the more they will appreciate it.
Definitely.
Yep. That was absolutely the case for me over and over. Anytime we gave a deal, we regretted it, and clients never thought like, I'm getting something so great for this low price. That was no client ever thought anything close to that. So you're absolutely spot on that the more you charge, the more appreciation there will be. Our happiest clients were the ones who paid the most. Absolutely, hands down.
Yep. Totally agree.
There you go. Here, you're making the little points, and I'm talking too much. So tell me a little bit. You work now with manufacturing companies. That's like when I went to your site, I love your pitch. It's so simple, straightforward, and clear. It's one of the most specific and targeted that I've seen on any agency website. And believe me, I've looked at a ton of them. So kudos to you for being very specific about who you serve and what you do for them very quickly. In your tagline, you serve manufacturing companies and you do custom theme development and SEO, and that's it. Pardon me for paraphrasing, right?
Yeah, that's basically it. The great, but well, and see here, and if I can pontificate for a minute, the part that I see like a lot of agencies do is it's almost like their pitch is to impress other agencies, or their pitch is really so vague because they're just doing everything for everyone. They don't state who they serve. They're doing awesome work for, great clients, or that'll be their pitch, or,
Right.
reimagining something, you know what I mean? It's like really vague, and it could, be about anybody. And the great part about this is the people that I'm trying to reach, they'll know instantly, hey, that's me. That's exactly what I need. But other people that maybe don't fit that specific profile, I don't have to turn them away if I don't want to. If they just need general SEO or something like that, they can look and see like, hey, he's done it for these other people, so he could probably do it for me too.
Yeah, I think that is a message that could be emphasized a little bit more frequently, because there's always a fear when we get too specific that it alienates other people that we might still be comfortable serving. And the problem, I mean, the truth is, it doesn't as much as we think it will. Very often, if we say we provide a surface to a certain profile of people and a different profile comes and still needs that same service, more often than we expect, they will still ask for our services, despite the fact that their profile is a little bit different than our description. And so there's less harm than I think a lot of us think there is when we get specific. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think it's the ultimate FOMO. And another thing that really changed my outlook on this was reading the Win Without Pitching Manifesto by Blair Enns, and really realizing that if you try and please everyone, you just sound like everyone else. And another book that I read that was like this was Badass Your Brand by Pia Sylvia. Those two books really kind of changed the way that I thought about it, in that if you fear taking that step of, putting yourself in a very specific box, good idea to do, because no positioning that is, basically, if you fear something, you should probably walk toward it. If it's too safe and you're not feeling any apprehension or fear, it's probably not positioned enough, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, it does. I think you're right, and this is relevant because these discussions are constant. Like I said before, we're immersed in them. I see don't be a jack of all trades, specialize advice over and over everywhere I go, and we're involved in communities of people like us running little
Mm-hmm.
agencies and freelancing businesses and struggling with the same problems. And so you and I know what like the frequent advice is and what the common problems for other businesses like us are. Are there any other things that come to mind that you think a lot of us are getting wrong? A lot of like freelancers and agencies in the WordPress space serving people kind of like you do.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that too. If you feel like your positioning is not right, you can always change it. Because about 3 or 4 years ago, I was trying to position around e-commerce, and it just didn't work the way that I was hoping that it would.
Mm.
And so I went back to generalization, and then that's when I made this other specialization shift. One thing that I would say that I see a lot of people not doing, that I think that they could, is, just publishing your thoughts and your, content, whether it's on a podcast like this one, or a YouTube channel, or a blog, or whatever. Nobody's going to be able to put you in a box, and you're not going to be able to draw in people from all over the place unless you publish stuff out there. Like, your peers will be able to, help put you in a box if they know what box to put you in, if you publish content around it. And likewise, there's a bunch of random people, from all over the place that follow me. And I don't have a big following. I'm just one person. I'm just a guy, grinding it out. But there's people that end up, following me for, pretty much forever. Just because they find a piece of content that I've written or, put out there, and it resonates with them. And maybe they're not going to tell like 1,000 people or whatever, but they might tell like, one or two people. But that's how you build up. It's a long-term process. And I think a lot of people are focused on, optimizing, this and optimizing that. And I think that's great if you've got like a lot of leads coming in, but I think you got to focus on that part first, then optimize everything. But, yeah.
Yeah, so much in there. You make me think. You're really making me reflect a lot on the lessons that I learned and some of the important revelations that I had. And I think what you're bringing up makes me think a little bit about the realization I had about how we're not all at the same stage, which seems obvious, but there's a subconscious part of it, which I think, uh, in which we sort of think that everyone is. And when I learn something, I kind of feel like everybody else is learning this. And when I make a breakthrough, I kind of have this feeling like everybody else is like riding the same train that I am. When I come across an article, it's now in my awareness. Like, oh, my eyes have been opened by this information. And so everybody else's eyes must be too, because this hit my radar. This got 1,000 retweets. Everybody else must kind of be figuring this out with me. But in truth, there are 100 trains behind me still catching up, as well as 100 trains ahead of me that, are learning things that I haven't got to yet. And when I figure these things out and I have these breakthroughs, it can be quite valuable to share that information, just as you've been describing, because all those people who haven't got to this point yet, they're looking for this information and those breakthroughs that I've made. And I can help them. We can help them with that information. So it sounds like have had very similar experiences where you actually take the time to share what you've discovered, and it's helped people.
I think so. I hope so. It feels like it, it is. I feel like that's the one thing that I've done, and maybe other people would be different, but I feel that's the one thing that I've done that's actually allowed me to, even be on the radar of people such as yourself, or, the clients that do end up finding me.
Sure. These days, what are your most successful means for acquiring new clients?
So usually people will find me if they're, searching for a specific problem that they're trying to solve. That's always been, like, back in the day, it would be for a specific WordPress problem, and nowadays it's more for specific SEO problems. And people seem to find me like that. I've had a lot of people like find me locally. That's always seems to be a good place to start, is just ranking locally. Like I mentioned previously, I used to do a lot of things like Facebook ads and Twitter ads, and I'm sure that raised some awareness, but just, putting content and having people find it, and that seems to be what works, because I'm not limited by a geography like I was in the past, or at least like I feel like I was in the past. I actually get people from a kind of a greater area than I did before. So
I used to be really into SEO, like a long time ago.
mhm. Yeah.
And then, not because of SEO, but because of other things that I found myself tasked with, I just got into other stuff, and SEO changes fast. And eventually I felt like I was really out of touch, and it wasn't a responsibility of mine or a service I was selling. And now I feel like pretty darn out of touch. Is SEO still, and I know what your answer is going to be, but I want to hear like how emphatic your answer is. Is SEO still an important service for businesses?
Well, only if you don't want to rely on paying AdWords for the rest of
Hmm.
your life. I
Is
mean,
one
if
or
you're
the other?
fine with, yeah, I mean, if you're fine with paying for your leads like every single time for the rest of your life, then yeah, then it's not important. But if you actually want to get people every day sending in a quote request, or calling you up wanting to order stuff, or ordering stuff online, then yeah, SEO is pretty important.
Do you think it is more important now to hire a professional for your SEO help than it was in years past? Or is it becoming something that's a little bit easier for the layperson to manage themselves?
I think I'm going to say there's two answers to this. I think if your business is not making a ton of money yet, then you could probably get by with doing it yourself and doing some of the more obvious things, like optimizing on-page content, just trying to get some basic links. You could reach out to, friends of yours that have a similar business, or your distributor network, or, whatever it is, and get people to link to you. That's one thing that a lot of people just aren't aware of. I think those things are good. I think once you start getting to a certain level of sales or a competition, let's say that you're not just competing for like a 30-mile radius, but you're trying to compete on a bigger level. I think you need somebody either in-house or as an outside consultant that's helping you with that, because the water starts getting a little deep.
Okay. Gotcha. I hadn't really thought about it so much in those terms, like maybe, the scale that you're operating on and the scale of your competition. It's one thing to compete in your local community, another at a state level or a national level or international and so on. And then suddenly you very likely have major players in competition with you. We're all ultimately competing with Amazon at the end of the day, aren't we?
Yeah, it seems that way.
Right. Okay. So you describe on your site like a certain type of, not just the type of business, but even a certain size of business where your help is most appropriate. And there is a range of like business size. Um, and I assume like at a certain point, you would recommend, like below that, you would recommend, like you guys could probably figure this out. And then like a certain point above that, like maybe what is needed, a bigger team besides yourself.
Yeah, or like having somebody in-house. Well, yeah, definitely, like, and I know what you're talking about, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I think it's like something like 250,000 to 50 million in revenue per year.
Mhm.
And the reason why that is so if you're below 250 grand or right at that mark, you probably have a staff of between 1 and 4. And paying for aggressive SEO is going to cost you about 4 figures a month. And at that level, a lot of people don't necessarily see the wisdom in that, or they don't, it's not a big enough pain point. They could probably get by with doing certain things, or finding somebody who's, maybe a more junior SEO. One thing I would advise against: don't just buy the cheapest SEO company that you can find, like the ones that send you spam emails, or the ones that advertise like $200 a month from India. And nothing against people in India. There's some good SEO firms there too. But you want somebody that's actually going to have the resources to help you. And some of these things, I mean, just the tools that I pay for to do SEO alone, uh, is like $300 or $400 a month, just, for the different tools. That's not even going into, doing the client stuff. So if somebody's selling like hella cheap, that's probably not going to work. But when you're in that growing stage, like 250 grand, a million, 5 million, you're going to need somebody to help you grow that company, somebody like myself, or somebody else out there, or a small agency that could help you with the many things that you need to be doing, because you're probably not going to have time. You might have an in-house sales person, you might have somebody doing marketing, but you want to be there to guide them. You want to have an outside person like guiding them. But when you get to a certain level, you've got you're probably going to be hiring people in-house, because it's going to be a full-time thing, where it's not just, part of the time, but it's like all the time. You're creating marketing materials, videos, blog posts, reference sheets, PDFs, as well as going out and doing things like link building and, improving the UX on your site and all these different things. So at a certain point, you're going to probably pull those things in-house. What I take great pride in is seeing the businesses that I've been working with for a year, 2 years, and watching them grow from, here to up here. And hopefully I'm guiding them like even higher. That is kind of the rush and that I'm in now, because I know that they know that I'm helping them. And no one can, I mean, the evidence is right there. It's like, here's where you were, here's where your traffic was, here's where it is now, here's where your money was, here's where it is now. I mean, it's absolute proof. So that's what I enjoy.
Well, I love that. I love it. And I can see getting enjoyment out of that. When I have a question about SEO and about what clients come to you with. Now, I haven't been doing SEO all these years. I only did it kind of, I don't know, 8 years ago or beyond, at least. And, but I was also doing web stuff all of that period. Now, when I was having client meetings, 8 years ago, clients came and I would have to explain what, something like WordPress was. They wouldn't know. They just want a website, blah, blah, blah. They didn't know much about a CMS and so on. Now, I don't build websites for clients, but if I did, and as recently as I was, not that long ago, clients come and often do know that information. Like the base knowledge has gone up. And clients are coming saying, I want my site built in WordPress. So I want to use this theme. And I was hoping we could use this plugin. And I'm like, what? How did you learn this? I mean, I'm supposed to tell you what tools we're going to use. So something happened in that time frame. Or maybe my client base just changed. But I've heard this echoed from other people in the space. Now, can you parallel that with how SEO has changed over that time? Because I don't know. Back then, I was having to explain to people what SEO was. It was a buzzword. A lot of them had heard of it. Almost no clients like really understood it, but they're just like, this SEO thing, I need it. I heard it. I need it. What's the difference now? Is it still kind of the same?
Yeah, I'd say it's not quite as much as the analogy that you're talking about with WordPress, where people are a little bit more educated about it. I think SEO is still a little bit of a black box. The people that I run into, they'll either, anybody that wants it, they understand what it is. Like they want to rank higher in Google. I think that they don't necessarily understand how to get there. And I think a lot of people still think of it as like some fairy dust that you sprinkle on top. And then all of a sudden you're ranking, ranking above Amazon now. It just doesn't work like that.
Right. You can do it overnight, right?
Sure.
As soon as the check clears, I'll be up there.
I'll just tell Google, hey, Google, turn on the SEO faucet for this website over here.
It's that easy.
It's that easy. Yeah, I think some people, a lot of people, they have some understanding of it. I think a lot of people, their understanding of it might be from, 10 years ago. They understand if you, mess with the words on the page, that might do something. I think a lot of people have that kind of idea of what it is. I think a lot of people don't understand how Google ranks sites, as in, how they perceive brands, how they use page rank. They don't understand things like your competitor is killing you because they've got 500 pages of content and you've got like 10, and they've got 1 million links from 20,000 sites and you've got 20. Those things they don't understand. So I think there is some education to that's required. So
yeah. Well, I guess that's probably what I expected. What are some of the tools that you think are like particularly valuable? And what I would imagine, I would wager that you've tried a lot of tools, because there are a lot of tools. There are a lot of different SEO tools out there. A lot of different tools to like show like how you're ranking and your link profile and your your content structure and your HTML markup and this and that. There's a lot of tools out there. I would go out on a limb and say you've probably tried a bunch of them. What are some of the ones that really stand out as truly useful to you?
So the ones that are in my toolbox right now are Ahrefs and KW Finder. And if you're doing local SEO, Moz Local is a good choice. I've tried many other ones like Bright Local. That one's pretty good. SEMrush is a good alternative to Ahrefs, like a full suite of being able to, not only track ranking position for certain keywords, which is useful, but you want to be able to track like your competition, like are they going up or down? Because I think a lot of it is looking for patterns and looking not only at their link profile, their content profile, their top pages, and the content gap between you and them, but you can look at kind of like, in the context of all of it, like, hey, these 10 sites are above you and they all have links from certain sites, or they all seem to have certain pages where the things and they're getting a lot of traffic from those. So those are the things that I kind of look for when it comes to that. So we can kind of close the gap and figure out, hey, like the people who buy these sorts of products or services, they're really interested in these things. We should probably have something on our site about that.
How would you answer a client? And this is maybe a lesson for other consultants. How would you answer a client who said, I'm not sure why I need you, John. I could just use these tools.
Go ahead.
Good
answer.
Answer.
Because, yeah. I mean, I'm like, that's fine. You can look at the tools are great, but you're still going to have to do the work. The two hardest things that the tools are there. They can tell you where you're ranking, but they're not going to like sprinkle the SEO dust for you. It's like Yoast. Hey, I installed Yoast. I'm supposed to rank now, right? I think that's a misconception as well. Mm-hmm. Well, I installed Yoast. The biggest things that you have to do is create content, build links, build your brand. Those things a tool can't do for you. You have to put your hands in the black earth and do the work, plant the seeds, watch them grow. You have to do that work. And if you're not doing it, and I've had people ask me this too, like, how do you do all this and still run a business? You either budget time for it and it's a priority, or you don't, because you and I and everybody else is the same 24 hours. Or hire somebody, and have them help you with it. I mean, you could buy tools all day long. It doesn't do anything if you don't do anything on top of it.
Right. Totally. John, our time is running a little short, so I want to shoot some wrap-up questions your way. Yeah, before we're done here. Let's see. What is on your calendar of the rest of this year and next year? Anything that people might end up bumping into you at?
Well, I just did a thing yesterday, a presentation at the East Bay meetup on how to do an SEO audit. I don't have anything on the calendar where I'm going to be out and about, like giving presentations or anything like that. You can definitely catch me each Friday live on the WP-Tonic roundtable. I'm part of the panel there with a deep bench of other web professionals. It's a deep bench. It's kind of like some of these other ones, like whoever there's normally people that show up, but whoever shows up, we run with that, and we tackle kind of things that are going on both in the world of the web and digital marketing and WordPress. So
right,
yeah,
it's great. It's fun to have those kinds of shows that get a chance to see what the people in the industry are talking about and different perspectives on the issues, just, candid perspectives and healthy discussion back and forth, as opposed to just a few subtweets and a blog post here or there. That's really nice. So they can, and anybody who wants to check that out can go to
They
WP-Tonic.
can. Yeah, I think it's wp-tonic.com/podcast episodes. Yeah, definitely check that out. I also got a YouTube channel. If you just go on YouTube and search #Lockedown SEO, I should pop up. So if you want to check that out, I'm publishing YouTube videos once a week. So peep that.
Right on. Do you have any good recommendations of guests that I should have on this show in the future?
Hmm. There's a Canadian guy, Paul Thompson. He does SEO. I don't know if you've had it in him on.
I have not.
You might check him out.
Good plan. Yeah, great recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how can people get in touch with you, John, if they're interested?
You can go to my website, which is Lockedown SEO. And on the socials, I'm Lockedown _ on Twitter, either Lockedown Design or Lockedown SEO, pretty much everywhere else. So.
And I would recommend the Business of WordPress Slack community to anybody tuning in and thinking any of these topics are interesting. A lot of what we discussed is the kind of stuff that gets talked about in this Slack community, and it's a good one. I've been a part of a lot of Slack groups, right? There's some good minds in there talking about cool topics, getting great advice, just sharing and caring. It's really fun to be a part of. And I'm not in consulting anymore, and so I don't engage in a lot of those discussions. But I still think it's super cool and enjoy being a part of it. So yeah, check that out. Actually, I don't know how to recommend you check it out. I guess hit up one of us and we'll get you an invite. How else would you join the Slack group? Anyway.
Yeah, just hit us up. Yeah.
Hit us up. Well, it's been fun, John. Thanks for taking time out of your afternoon, my evening, to chat,
Well, thank you. I appreciate being on. I was really pumped up for this. So.
All right. Well, it's cool. We'll bump into each other at a WordCamp or something someday, and take care. Have a good rest of your day. I'm going to go have some dinner.
All right. Sounds good. Peace.